Hey everybody, it's me, Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie. On this episode of CD Junkie, I'm going to be talking about an artist by the name of Duncan Reid. And of course, I'm going to talk about his band, The Big Heads. And you have to talk about the old punk band called The Boys if you're going to talk about Duncan Reid. Now, at the end of this video, I've got about a 4-minute medley of songs from Duncan Reid's solo album. So if he sounds intriguing, stick around for that. It's really fun. And if you love melodic punk, bubblegum, power pop, you're going to dig it. I always like to start these videos out by telling you how I got into that band. And of course, when I talk about Duncan Reid, I'm talking about The Boys. This is where I first heard of Duncan Reid. He was the bass player of a band called The Boys. Now, how did I get into the band called The Boys? And that all started with the release of All Mod Cons by The Jam. Now, how did All Mod Cons get me into a band called The Boys? Well, that's because on the back of the original album cover, it had a picture of Paul Weller's Rickenbacker guitar, which has a sticker featuring the logo of the band The Boys. Now, I'd never heard of the band before, and I had to check it out because, that's the way I was back then. I would definitely check out a band because a current band that I liked either liked them or they were influenced by them. So I would definitely check all this stuff out and, try to hear as much music as possible. It's still pretty much the way I am now. But so I ended up getting The Boys and I fell in love with them. Kind of Ramones influence, but it's really British punk, but with a lot of pop. I don't like to call bands punk pop or pop punk because of the whole 90s movement just really annoyed me. So it's just melodic punk, great, maybe not quite Buzzcocks or undertones of Ramones, but their hooks were just as good. 1977. First album came out and it's just called The Boys. This one here has bonus tracks on it. The CD came out on Captain Oi Records and filled with great songs. The next album is really, really what sold me, and that's called Alternative Chartbusters. And this has loads of great tracks. This came out in 1978, and this is this album that really sold me on them. And I just started to go back and buy every 7/8 single, and I bought everything moving forward. Third album was called To Hell with the Boys, came out in 1979. And this is a version here on Captain Oi with bonus tracks. Another great collection, great melodic pop with that punk edge. The Boys weren't the kind of guys that you would meet in an alley and they'd beat you up. They might steal your lunch, but they were still rough, tough, but you kind of knew they had a soft side because they had these great hooks and great melodies. Fantastic. At the end of 1979, The Boys masqueraded as a band called The Yobs, boy backwards is yob, and they released a Christmas album, which is a bunch of punk pop, I hate that term but I have to use it, Christmas songs, and that's real fun to check out. Finally, in 1981, the band was down to a quartet. They had initially been a quintet, and they released this great pop platter called Boys Only. And again, a lot more great pop punk songs. The CD has bonus tracks on it. And then they split up after this. Now, before I continue, what I want to tell you is the last three albums I talked about, which is Boys Only, To Hell with the Boys, and The Yobs, plus a live 1980 show, plus a disc of rarities, all are featured in this Captain Oi box called The Boys on Safari. So if you want to hear early Duncan Reid, and if you want to hear just great British melodic punk from the original era, you definitely have to check it out. And you have to remember, they called him Kid Reid back then because he was like 16 years old back then. They broke up in 1981, but about 15 or so years later, they released an acoustic album. The guys got back together and recorded acoustic versions of some of their hits. That's called Power Cut. They officially got back as a full live electric band in 1999 and started playing around a lot. They released a single in 2002, but they didn't release anything after that. And by 2011, Duncan Reid left the band. Now, in 2014, The Boys did return with the album called Punk Rock Menopause. Duncan Reid was not on the album, but Duncan Reid had started his own career. His debut album came out in 2012. If you love fun, snotty, bratty, bubblegum, power pop punk, you're going to love Duncan Reid. And his first album came out. It was called Little Big Head. 2012, just a great solo debut. It retains that punky energy of The Boys, but it has a little bit of a sweetness to it, which is really fantastic. It's still punky, but it's just got a lot of flavor and a lot of great songs on it. And that's that album there. Now, after this album was released, he formed a band called Duncan Reid and the Big Heads. Now, he reissued this album under that band name in 2019. So this is the same album, but it has a few bonus tracks. In 2014, Duncan Reid and the Big Heads released the difficult second album, which actually was a much better album than the first album. Production was better, the songs were tighter, songs were better, and there's a lot more fun energy attached to it, and it's really a fantastic album. Like I said, stick around to hear some songs from these albums after I finish up here. In 2017, he released the even better Bombs Away album. Fantastic album, full of great fun. There's, like I said, bubblegum, power pop, punk, glam. It's just and great tunes, great melodies, just things that you're humming after the first or second listen. And it's really, really fantastic. And that is Duncan Reid and the Big Heads with Bombs Away. In 2020, he released one of the best albums of the year with Don't Blame Yourself, another great collection of songs, punchy, poppy, punky, whatever you want to call it. It's just great fun. And you can tell that Duncan and the band are having a great time in the studio because that really comes out in the music. Now, in 2021, he did release a live album. I'm not exactly sure if that came out on CD, but I do know that it is available digitally. Anyway, that's it for my video on Duncan Reid. And now here's a 4-minute medley featuring 8 songs from his 4 studio albums.
Don't need much money 'cause the drinks are free. Hey, everybody there on me. My City Rockers is the only place I wanna be. Hey, Montevideo. Oh, 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 oh. Hey, Montevideo. Yeah, yeah. Hey, Montevideo. You'll be the end of me. Kelly's gone insane. Kelly's gone insane. Kelly's gone insane. There was no reason or rhyme why she committed that crime. Now she's gonna do time. I'm just as good as I used to be. I used to be good. I'm just as good as I used to be. Was I real good? But when Jack comes running, everything's gonna be fine. Little face smiling, toys all left behind. You know when Jack comes running, everything's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. I see something fine. Those little fingers and toes, dimples and nose. Yeah, little fingers and toes. Why can't we do it? Everybody's doing it. Let's light the fireworks, stand back and enjoy it over. Bombs away, damn the consequences. Bombs away, let's go crazy. Here we go again. It's my fantasy, a boat's home from reality, a mental refuge from it all. And I can fly away there anytime I like. I can fly there in my mind. And I can lie, feel the breeze blow over me. Yeah, I can fly there anytime. Welcome to my day. I went the road with no, the fat lady's ready to sing. And all I know for sure, she better get them in. Come on and get them in. Good, my mind's a gin. Come on and get them in.
And that's it. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to watch this video. I really appreciate it. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, ring that bell for future notifications, leave a comment below. And until the next time, remember me. I'm Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie.